And I just briefly want to mention oneness. You know, oneness is a possibility, and it's the reality of the consciousness universe. The ancient matriarchies and the feminine mystery schools of ancient Greece talked a lot about oneness being the essence of reality. And the pre-Socratic philosophers had the term all is one, which is related to that. In the consciousness universe, the ultimate reality is a kind of continuum of many forms of consciousness. What's it all about? Well, it's all about a differentiation in oneness. It's like this ultimate relationship everywhere because we're all a part of this continuum of consciousness. Most of our connections with other forms of consciousness we're totally unaware of, but you can become aware of them and you can work with them. And this is the universe in which intent works. There's a book out everybody's reading called The Secret. It's basically how to use intent, how to use our consciousness to modify the consciousness of the universe to bring to us whatever we want. That's the consciousness universe is behind why intent works and why the shamans have so emphasized mastering intent. Okay, and the other thing I want to talk about just briefly is this oneness. Oneness is the experience of reality, of the mystics, of the shamans, of the native people, of the feminine. And so this consciousness universe gives them a place in a way that the old matter mechanism universe, the dead universe of mechanics, doesn't have any place for them at all. The rational mind has not understood this way of knowing at all, and it doesn't understand this universe. It can't experience it. It experiences the earth as things. These other forms of knowing have been able to experience the earth as this great oneness. And I've talked about the experience of spirit and the love that spirit is as of a great oneness. And so this universe has room for all of history's negligibles. Everything that high culture has in fact put down and despised and rejected. But these are the modes, they're the rich soil and the seedbed out of which the rational modes themselves spring. Okay, now, I've been empowering you metaphysically. Now I want to do my best to empower you practically. I've been talking about, beginning with the last talk, the catastrophe that we have caused for the earth. First of all, I want to remember that the love is uppermost. The media will not tell you either the best or the worst of what is happening. The best is the love is now uppermost, just why I'm talking about Jesus and other things. And the worst is that, boy, we are in deep trouble with the planet. And I'm painting to you some of that deep trouble. There are two scenarios. Well, everybody's attention is focused on the collapsing economies, markets, etc. What's really collapsing are the Earth's ecosystems, millions of years in the making. And it owes simply to human arrogance and human ignorance. We have reached a place where the day of reckoning is here, basically. Now, the day of reckoning is usually a day of wrath. I am hoping that it can be a day of awakening and a call to radically rethink ourselves at every level, as I have been trying to do already in these talks about the earth, and now we need to rethink ourselves practically. The Earth's ecosystems are collapsing. So is the system. The systems of life in which we all live are also disintegrating, and they have to. The present system does not honor the earth. It does not respect individuals. It doesn't respect life. it doesn't work. And it's going, and it's a question of, well, for my take, it's gone. And the old structures, the thoughts that, the seminal ideas that carried them have departed, and the structures themselves are going. Modern life often seems to me a great big slush of words, mainly devoted to passing the buck to someone else and not having to take any responsibility whatsoever. Okay, where are we? As I speak to you today, there are really two environmentally linked events happening in the world. One is that the Philippines has been totally shattered by this huge typhoon, and all countries are pouring in aid to help the people recover. The other is that there's a conference in Poland on global warming, hardly mentioned in the mainstream media at all. 130 countries have just walked out in a kind of helpless fury at the arrogance and insensitivity of the corporations, the rich corporations and the rich CEOs of the big companies in the rich countries, China, America, Europe, Russia. The damage that the corporations have done to all countries around the planet. The effects of global warming, no ice caps, no on the mountains, no water supply, drought increasing everywhere. Shad Lake used to be the greatest inland body of water in the world. Freshwater lake is now dried up to a puddle, and people are fighting over water. I had mentioned that there were two scenarios coming down. One predicted by Lovelock, and the other that the indigenous people say this all has to do with the reappearance of the feminine. And I go on to say, in fact, the only way we can avert Lovelock's drastic scenario, that the Earth's population, now at 7 billion, will have shrunk to 500 million living around the poles by 2100. The only way we can avert that is, in fact, to bring in new feminine principles and rebuild our shattered systems on terms that honor life, that honor the earth. Everybody is asking these days, well, who's in charge? Who's in charge? Well, the ruling families are in charge. Well, the secret societies are in charge. Well, the corporations are in charge. Well, in fact, the earth is in charge, and the earth is calling the shots. If we will not support the earth will not support us. And the earth has all the power in the world to shift our priorities and bring our systems down. It's all there in BP, in the disaster that BP oil was in the Gulf a year or so ago. The top executives were down on their latest rig, toasting themselves on all the money they were going to make, and whammo, it blew up under them. And for something like 4 months, it couldn't be stopped and it couldn't be capped. It spewed oil all over the Gulf, oil that's just entered the ecosystems at every level. The great thing about all of that was that NBC every night on the news taught the American people about what an ecosystem is and how it works, that it is millions of years in the making, and it is a delicately balanced, interconnected fabric, and we are tearing through it at our own peril. The earth has full power to change our systems. Look at what happened with the drought last year in America and the failure of the corn crop. It sent reverberations through the whole economy, first to all the people who lost the crop, then to everybody all the manufacturers who employed corn in any way, shape, or form, and almost all processed foods employed corn. This is going to get, and so those prices all shifted. Everything that's happened, these enormous storms on the East Coast, finally even the military has realized our threat to national security. Everything that the earth is now doing is affecting human systems. What about, I have sketched out briefly some of the truths that are now coming to light, and that is that the task before us is momentous. We are a civilization that is based on destroying the earth. We have to become a civilization that honors and affirms the earth. And I've been calling the thinkers to come and help. And I've been calling everybody to wake up and take their power back. This is a time for everyone to take back their power and to make a difference. I spelled out some new concepts for the earth. 3 basic ones, like first of all, in the earth, everything is connected. Everything is connected to everything else, and we are connected to everything else. Second, that it's all consciousness throughout. And third, that the planet is a living organism, which means every part of the planet is important for the whole, and not just for human beings. And I spelled out some old concepts of the earth and some new ones. And I spelled out thinking about life itself in terms of its own properties, like consciousness, like it has light living. The planet is not things, commodities and resources to be ripped off in order to make a fast buck. She is living, conscious beings like ourselves. She has needs that must be met if we are going to stay here. And so, because she is our total life support system, she has rights. And human beings need to start honoring the rights of every other species here. We have never cared for anyone but ourselves. And I have been saying to you, we have to get out of our terrible attitude to the planet that was all made for us to do with whatever we like, and everything is there for us to make use of. This is the mentality that fuels the corporations, and it drives each one of us, and it is based on a very soulless, it attests to the total bankruptcy of all human religions at this point, and is based on a mindless, soulless way of thinking about the planet. And so I want to talk a bit about the corporations and how modern life is organized. We American people have to recognize certain facts about our life if we're going to make a difference anywhere. And the most obvious fact is that we are a great, enormous economic, medical, military, industrial state, as is much of the world. Almost everybody is in some form of institutionalized employment. This is a huge economic machine. Each of us is a little cog somewhere in this enormous economic machine. We're quite dispensable, and we are often dispensed with whenever the powers that be see fit. Most of us are earning our living in this kind of system. It runs on fear and intimidation, and it par excellence does not respect the individual. This is a very thinly based form of political tyranny, and the American people need to wake up to this fact that these enormous complexes, these corporations, have no interest whatsoever in civil liberties. They profess interest in civil liberties. They pay lip service to civil liberties, but they have no real interest in them whatsoever. They are interested in a docile, obedient, unconscious workforce who will convert the rich energies of the earth into things, into consumer items that can be bought and sold. And this forms our religion. This is everybody's mainstay. And whereas in the American Revolution, Tom Paine wrote, well, give me liberty or give me death. These days it's give me my paycheck and I won't say a word. And nobody dares to speak up. As Barbara Ehrenreich put it in her book, Nickel and Dimed in America, the going precept is smile or die. There are two very different sets of values at the heart of American life. And we're caught in both of them. But because of the way we earn our living, we're very much caught in all of these corporate structures. And the institutions, I would say institutionalized, i.e. with all of its various forms of sickness. The destruction of the planet is being driven by corporate arrogance, corporate bullying, and corporate greed. The corporations have no loyalty to anyone. They have so rigged themselves that they can terminate any employee at a moment's notice. They're mainly concerned with how they can avoid paying people rather than how to pay them. They don't care about the earth. The old motto has been slash and burn or cut and run. They have no real respect for the earth. They are interested in power, profits, mainly male prestige and empire. The old male traditions that has been their emphasis. And we're pretty well organized in these systems of life. And civil liberties are on one side, and the real interest in the corporations are on the other. The corporations are not interested in the truth that the planet has consciousness, or that you do. The less conscious the planet, the better, the more easily they can turn it into things. Now, what's transpiring? A lot of things are changing in the modern scene that will let us make a difference. First of all, the incoming impulses of love and light and life are affecting everybody. They're going to affect everybody in the corporations also. I would say second of all, there are women burrowing into these old, typically male structures at every level with who knows what, like termites in the wood, who knows with what unforeseen consequences. The third thing that has become apparent is that the corporations, all of us, and via the corporations, are destroying the planet, and we have to turn our act around. We and the corporations are at a place where if the corporations persist in their reckless course, the human adventure is over here. Now, I want to think a little more about this. I've talked to you already about how all of our models for organization are pyramids. At the top has always been some divine male, a king, a pope, who's up there closer to God. And then various lesser degrees of importance down to the very base. And the base is not divine at all. And it consists of the indigenous people, the women, the poor, and of course the earth. Has been the least factor in anyone's consciousness. What has been uppermost has been profits and markets, and making money any way we can. Okay, here are the pyramids. This is how they've been thought in the past. And these old systems of privilege are based on the old forms of metaphysics that have been shafting. The truth is, and reincarnation makes us this truth, is that we're all equally divine. We all equally belong here. And the deepest truth of a pyramid is it's only as strong as the base. This is a question of, the last should be first and the first last. The CEO thinks he's the one who's really in charge. Actually, it's the base. pyramid depends on the strength of the base, and if the base weakens, ultimately the whole structure will weaken, and down will go the divine male at the top. And so the people who will really holding the real power are the poor, the native, the women, and the earth. That is the power base, and there's a different kind of power that comes down from the top. The good thing about it is that if the people at the top can wake up, they can, by a few simple decrees, bring about the major changes that we need. But what I want to suggest to you is, first of all, the real power in the pyramid is the base. If the people at the top want to survive at all, they need to care about the people at the base, because that's where the strength of the pyramid is. Second of all, everybody's equally divine. The people at the base are just as important as the people at the top. And so we're all connected. And in fact, how do the people at the top make their money? Well, they make it actually from the poor. I want to say that at this point, a deep dialogue has to begin between the rich and the poor, because the systems are not working. And all of the old assumptions that underpin these forms of power and organization are up in question. The biggest one is, in fact, the stalling of the economy, the slowdown of the economy, people finding themselves out of work. But the real one is what's going on with the planet, that we are in a life form that will destroy the earth if we keep on as we are. Okay, I say there has to be a deep dialogue between the rich and the poor, person to person practically. Who knows, TV could be a medium for this dialogue. Even now on the talk shows, I hear people talking much more relevant issues than they have ever talked about before, about the health of the planet, drones, all of this stuff. Everything that's up in people's consciousness. And we are in a break in the ages where the love is coming in. And so I've been saying we are all connected. Now, I hear many people saying, why are the rich so mean? Why are they so mean? I think now at this point the system has to be completely rethought. Why are the rich so mean? Well, actually, they're mean in America. It's not as bad in other countries. Most countries that I know or visited, the rich take much more for granted their requirement to redistribute the wealth in the forms of health care or social safety nets or benefits or medical whatever. This is not so in America. And I would say the reason that the rich are so mean in America is because the masculine principle has dominated America from the very start. A principle that I would call the conquer and subdue attitude to things. And in fact, I may as well lay my cards out in front of you right now. The callousness and the cruelty of the modern world in general owes to a simple fact, that it has been male-dominated for thousands of years. And indeed, in the modern world, this impulse has pretty well run its course. And other impulses, like the feminine, like the nurturing and caring impulse, are flowing in. The present system that destroys the earth, it's based on the old masculine conquer and subdue attitude to the planet that has prevailed in America since the start. Conquer the Indians, conquer the wilderness, conquer this, conquer the world economically, on it goes. It's the view that deep down we're separate from nature, we're not connected, it's just things, that the earth is things and its commodities and resources to be ripped off, and that's all it is, and it's about power and money. People are just workforce, consumers. How else would I characterize it? That's pretty, we're the lords and masters of the planet will do what we say. only some of us are made in the image of God, nobody else is, and they have to be told what to do by us. And down at the base is, I would say, our universal, modern, absolutely false religion of things. The whole of modern life is based on the making, the selling, the buying, and the owning of things. And this is a false religion that every country is involved in, even organized religion is involved in. And this is where we're destroying the planet. And this is why it's so important ultimately to rethink our religious values and the religious truths that I'm trying to lay out to you. This is our religion of things, and it's powered by the scientific image of nature as something that has no consciousness, is just things, matter and mechanism. And how else would I characterize this? It's maintained by standing armies. It's inflamed by advertising. You know, the modern world is insane. And it's based on, and this is only possible, this false religion, because of the false ways we have thought about the earth. Now, I'll tell you my hope for the change. First of all, the system is fear-based, and it always has been. And now there's a new impulse coming into the world with the love impulse. And that's why I say, always return to the love is uppermost. It is based on the destruction of the earth, and we have to turn this around into a civilization that honors earth. It is given by the male mind with these typically male values that reward aggression or, just insanity, like CEOs earning billions of dollars for marketing fizzy drinks. It's hard to think that this has any real meaning and the ultimate truth of things. And finally, that, now what was my final? This is the clincher. All of these systems were elaborated. All of the economic systems we are living in were elaborated at the time that we had no understanding really of the earth at all as connected or as living, and what this means. And all of a sudden now we're up against the limits. We're up against what's called the limits of growth. It owes to the fact that callousness and cruelty in America is part of the fact that it's been male-dominated from the beginning, and this is part of the problem of the whole world. And it's been male-dominated all along because way back, the men edited the women out of the discussion. It all begins with what Peter Kingsley, in his book In the Dark Places of Wisdom, called the barbaric subordination of women at the dawn of history. And that's what happened. And the men took over. And when the men took over, the wholesale destruction of the planet set in. And these awful inequalities and extremes between the rich and the poor, as there now are. I would say, and the hope is that the women, hey boys, here we are, move over. The women are here, and our impulse is different from yours. You find it so easy to take life, we give life. You find it so easy to put people down everywhere and beat up on them and destroy and lie, and this is not our impulse. We want a world based on truth and love. And the new love impulse and the feminine energies that are flowing in are just the antithesis of what has ruled the world up until now. But we have a chance. And so I'm saying the system needs to be rethought. It doesn't work. It's so callous in America because America has been gripped by the masculine impulse for so long. Big business never wanted any health standards, no safety nets, no job security, nothing. It wanted a free hand to make money any way it saw fit. And so the robber barons, and these things come, they go. We're at a place where it has to change. Now, the inequalities, where do I start this? Well, I'm saying that there's a deep equality among us all, and we all need one another, because the rich actually make their money off the poor, which is one of the reasons the poor are poor. And this fact has to be recognized, that we are all interconnected, and we are all equally divine. And we all, at this point, not just the rich, have, as Obama laid out in one of his speeches, the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And people need to start taking their own power seriously and making claims for their validity. The system isn't working. First place, it only supports a few wealthy at the top. Everybody else suffers. The system has to be redesigned like the great economies of nature, where nothing is lost and nothing is wasted, and everyone is benefited, not just a few at the top. Now the other thing, it's not working. The trickle-down economics has slowed to a slow drip, and people are realizing they're just falling through the cracks. And why is this so? And why don't they have a right to a living, just as rich CEOs have a right? Trickle-down economics might work if the rich in America had a social conscience. The theory was, give the rich, well, it's a theory proposed by already wealthy men, give the rich more money, and you see they invest it then in various enterprises, and the poor benefit. But actually this isn't working in practice at all, because the rich in America have so little social conscience. You know, I think the rich are getting tired of their riches. The books coming out about how the rich live would make it clear you never want to be any one of them, living up to the Joneses and the shallowest of lives. And so at that level, it all needs to be rethought. Now, capitalism doesn't have to be the cruelty that it is. Neither do the corporations. All of them have to start doing the right thing. I have a friend, Connie, from Germany, who was telling me about all the incredible green space that the corporations have preserved in Germany. And I said to her, how do you get the corporations to do that? And she said, well, in Germany, the corporations try to do the right thing. It's time for the corporations to try to do the right thing in America. The times demand it. The realization that the planet, we are destroying the planet, demands it. The corporations have to be the ones, major powers, along with every one of us in our little niches, to bring about the necessary changes to switch over from a society that destroys the planet to one that affirms and honors her well-being. The truth of our connections is that the well-being of the earth is the bottom line on everyone, including the corporations. And if we can wake up to this at high and low levels, if the military can start waking up to their need to do something about bad storms by funding alternative green energies, then the corporations throughout America can start waking up. The CEOs have a tendency to be stupid. The first problem is they don't realize the first problem may be they don't realize that they're destroying the planet, and they need to come down to brass tacks and stop thinking just about profits and markets at this point, and start thinking about what's happening to the planet itself. And if they come smarten up and make these wise decisions from the top down, they can have enormous influence on the whole planet almost overnight. And this is what it's going to take. Every individual can make a little bit of difference. But the problem is now so enormous. Many say, well, we need a benevolent dictator at the top to tell everybody what they have to do. all we need is some educated CEOs at the top. And so that's one way to deal with the corporations. Try to make sure the CEOs realize what they're doing. Now, the second problem may be that this old male impulse has always reveled in death and destruction. And so the boys may think, oh, we'll go down in flames, we'll take everybody down, an orgy of death and destruction. I would tell them, if you do this, this is not what this New Times is about. This is Rome. This has been there from the very beginning of history. And this is just the same old thing, more so. And if we end up back in the spirit world having absolutely trashed the planet, we will be confronted with the knowledge that human civilization, our civilization on Earth, was a total failure. These are not called for by the times. What's called for is one, a change of heart, two, a waking up to how the other people live. And the only way anybody at the top is going to do this is if the people at the bottom confront them. I'll tell you how to do this in a minute. They have an inability to imagine how poor people live themselves, and they're going to have to, everyone has to stand up for themselves at this point, and there are different ways of organizing to stand up. But if the CEOs can come on side, a few major decisions in the favor of life at the top can affect the whole country in almost no time. And so I'm urging all you CEOs who are listening to this talk, which I suspect you aren't, to start thinking, how can we do something new here? Not the same old Rome, I came, I saw, I conquered, and I utterly destroyed. Let's build something beautiful for everyone on planet Earth. And you show the leadership, you show the way. Don't lag behind. Don't make it just, the Snowdens and the Bradley Mannings who have to show the way. You take the initiative in converting the whole civilization from death into life and in whatever way we can do it. That's the first thing. The second thing is everybody is sensitive to PR. The more leaks coming out, the more exposing the sordid practices of so many corporations, the more righteous indignation among the American people, the better change will come. I want to remind you two ways that this kind of change has come about in the past. One of them was women getting the vote. Women were not allowed to vote because, well, they were considered not to be persons. Only persons could vote. So what did the women do? They showed up en masse at polling stations. But they showed up physically and demanded the right to vote, demanded to vote. They were treated in a manner so brutal that even the men wondered what was going on here. But in the end, everybody had to hear that the women had a point and women got the vote. In the beginning, everybody said women aren't making any difference anyhow, and they won't. In the last election, women made the difference, and they're making the difference all over the place. They're making the difference to all these ridiculous efforts to control women's reproduction. You just take a look. The women are coming out in full force to support the policies that support their health and well-being. And then there's another hope for the planet, that women have always been identified with the earth and often have identified themselves with the earth. And there's a whole cadre of people out there who have been marginalized in the past who are standing up for the earth, not just themselves but the earth. And another example that I want to remind you of is in the 1920s, Upton Sinclair wrote a book called The Jungle. It was all about how America's food is prepared. And its accounts include, rats falling in the soup and all sorts of stuff. And he really wrote it to try to alert everybody to the miserable existence of the people who work in the food industry. But as he said it later, he aimed at America's heart. He hit it in the stomach because everybody found out there were horrible conditions under which sausage and everything was being made, and there was a huge public outcry, and the Food and Drug laws came in. When the American people get upset enough, the government listens. Now, it is said by most people that in other countries, the governments fear the people, like in England and France, and the people get what they want. In America, it's the other way around. The government does whatever it likes, the people are afraid. People can start organizing themselves, and this is where the thinkers of the planet can make a difference. They will get past their fear. And so there are two kinds of power, one coming up from the people, insistently demanding their own right, and the other, if intelligent people at the top can realize what's really happening and not live in this tissue of lies and deception and money washing across the globe in huge amounts, mesmerizing everybody, then there's another power can come from the top. But speaking from the power at the base, okay, somehow the corporations manage to wangle for themselves the concept that these enormous corporations are an individual. I want to back up and say one thing here about the corporations. They've always been said to be too large to fail. They may well be at this point like the dinosaurs, too large not to fail. They wangled for themselves because it gives them all sort of tax breaks and things, the notion that the enormous complexes are a single individual. Well, the flip side of that is that if they're an individual, so is every other individual in America, and one individual can take another to court. And in fact, in every community, state, and every community and city and state practically, there are laws on the books that permit individuals to take corporations to task, to court. Individuals can stand up for their water rights. They have all sorts of rights to the preservation of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, their own local environment. No one knows better than ordinary communities what their environment is and what others are doing to it. And if people all across America in communities can be helped to organize themselves to take responsibility for their own environment, there are also laws on the books that permit them to take corporations that are trying to bottle their water or ruin the watersheds or steal the forest, take them to court. And that's an ultimate place where the powers of the mighty and the powers of the ordinary are the same. And there's a movement to do this that has originated. You can find the names online, but has originated in the state of Washington and Oregon, that's sweeping America like wildfire. People realizing we have the power to stand up to these big guys. There are lots of ways to stand up to the big guys. PR, complaint, righteous indignation, public fury, and it's high time that Americans felt a little public fury, but the ultimate is they have a legal right in law to protect their own watersheds. And so those are the hopes that I have. And the greatest hope I have is, first of all the present systems are fear-based. If the love is coming in, if we can bring in the love at every level, then we can reach for a principle of solidarity. I introduced it last time as a principle based on love. Solidarity, one for all for one. It's the last song in Billy Elliot. Now, Billy Elliot is a wonderful play about working class people in Wales and a young boy who wants to be a dancer, and how the striking miners are, and how they raise money and things. And the last song is all for one and one for all, solidarity forever. The irony is that the stage play, the tickets are so expensive that working class people can't go to it, but the rich can. And in fact, lots of rich people are going to see Billy Elliot. You never know where awakening is going to happen these days. Awakening is like the wind. The Spirit bloweth where it listeth. There are already groups of very wealthy people meeting that we don't want to just make our money in the same old way. We want to promote really, really worthwhile things for other people with our money. There are, on the face of it, there's no social conscience in America, but lots of individuals are waking up and helping other people organize around them and taking power back and starting to do the right thing. We all know what the right thing is. I think, and it's enshrined in the Bill of Rights. And there it is. It's in the Constitution. It's part of the Bill of Rights, and it isn't just the rich have the pursuit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Everybody has it. We live in a times of awakening. The love impulse is flowing in. That's the first hope for the system. The second hope is that we can convert from a society that destroys the planet into one that honors and affirms her. And I've given you a bunch of ideas and a bunch of practical suggestions how. And I'm calling on the thinkers everywhere. Be the mediators, be the bridge. Third thing is, all of the old systems were given by the male mind. Women are now entering the systems at every level. And as women really awaken and reclaim their true powers, female values, women's values will come in with them. And they honor life, the nurturing, caring, and honoring of life. It's a very feminine value, and it's coming in with the feminine. And the last one is that we now, all the old systems were elaborated when we didn't have any understanding of the planet whatsoever. And now we're getting new ideas, the right kind of ideas, about the kind of connections that exist among everything. And my last hope is that, we have become aware of what's happening to the planet only so recently. I was a student in 1963 when Rachel Carson's book came out called Silent Spring, alerting the scientific community to the drastic poisonous effects of DDT. It was vilified by the drug companies who spent fortunes trying to discredit her, but it alerted the scientific community, and ever since then the awareness of what we're doing to the planet has been increasing. And my faith is that if ordinary people, if all of us can know the truth of our situation, we can sit down and say, what do we do about this? That it calls an end to the lies and the kind of deceptions. Politicians can't lie about it anymore. Everybody knows there's something the matter with the weather and that they're going to be affected at some point or other. We're just at the beginning of what's happening to the Philippines. And it's a question of whether this is going to be our finest hour or our most depraved. That remains to be seen. There are the two scenarios, love locks. The only way to avoid the love lock scenario, I'm saying, is to bring in the feminine principles of caring, honoring, life-serving, life-nurturing, a respect for the sacredness of all life. And I've laid you out the metaphysics of that sacredness. Here are some of the equally radical consequences of that metaphysics for how we think about ourselves first and what our real powers are. We have powers at every level, from moral persuasion to legal challenges. And more investigative reporters need to get involved. More and more the papers need to come on side. TV needs to turn itself over to rethinking everything in talk shows and starting a dialogue. There has to be a deep dialogue between the rich and the poor, between women and men, between young and old. It's a time for the taking down of the barricades. And the new principles that are coming in of love and light support that move, and they support the ideas I've been giving you. And this solidarity has a very broad meaning. It can begin as simply as neighbors talking to each other, or people in cities talking to people in the next buildings, and then it can arise. It can go to rich CEOs talking to kids in the street about what really matters and what kind of civilization do we want on the planet. And I would say it's about turning away from the conquer and subdue, lies, fears, and deception model, death and destruction to all, into nurturing and caring, affirming, accepting, supporting, and an earth-centered perspective, a life-centered perspective, and rebuilding our systems in ways that honor everyone and that really do bring spirit to earth, just so at every level of society. And it begins, for every person, the buck stops here, and for every person, it begins with the knowledge that the love is uppermost, and that it's time to take our power back.